Welcome back, everyone, to World Gone Weird. Another week, another dose of, well, you know.
Yeah, another week of trying to figure out what's real and what's just manufactured outrage.
Let's try to find some hope in the weirdness, though. There's got to be some good news somewhere, right?
Hope? In this economy, I'm just hoping to make it to the end of the year without needing a bunker.
All right, let's dive in. I saw this headline about Ukraine's drone attack deep inside Russia. Pretty audacious, right?
Audacious is one word for it. I'm thinking reckless. What's the end game here? Is this really going to bring them closer to peace, or just escalate things further?
Well, the article does mention it happened right before peace talks. Maybe it's a show of strength, a way to get Russia to take them seriously at the negotiating table.
Or maybe it's just a really expensive way to say, we're still here and we're really, really annoyed. I mean, $7 billion in damage. That's a lot of angry bees.
The Pearl Harbor comparison is interesting, but is it really accurate? A single strike, however damaging, doesn't necessarily equate to a game-changing event.
Exactly. Pearl Harbor brought the U.S. into a world war. This is just another act in a long, drawn-out conflict. It feels like trying to win a chess game by smashing the board. Sure, you might disrupt things, but you're not exactly improving your position, are you?
I don't know. Maybe disrupting the established order is the point. Maybe Ukraine realizes they can't win a conventional war, so they're trying to destabilize Russia from within, force them to divert resources.
Plus, the article mentions Trump shifting from a pro-Ukraine stance and offering concessions to the Kremlin. That adds another layer of complexity. How much is this strike a reaction to that shift?
Concessions? Knowing Trump, those probably involve building a golf course on Ukrainian soil and renaming it Trump National Kyiv. It's always about the deal, isn't it?
It's disheartening to see the potential for compromise being undermined. Surely, there must be a middle ground that respects Ukrainian sovereignty while addressing Russia's security concerns.
Middle ground? In this political climate? That's like finding a unicorn riding a centaur delivering pizza. It just doesn't happen.
And what about the potential for escalation? The pro-Russian voices calling for nuclear strikes? That's not exactly reassuring.
Nuclear strikes? That's just the usual saber rattling. Putin knows that's the end of the line for everyone. Nobody wins a nuclear war.
You'd hope so. But the fact that it's even being mentioned shows how far we've slid. We need to focus on de-escalation, on finding diplomatic solutions before things spiral completely out of control.
De-escalation? From Putin? That's like asking a bear to stop eating honey. It's kind of his thing. But you're right, the possibility of nuclear strikes should really, really scare everyone.
Okay, shifting gears, I saw this article about the Senate trying to pass Trump's budget plan. Apparently, there are some pretty deep cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
Surprise, surprise. Tax cuts for the rich. Cuts for the poor. It's the Republican mantra, isn't it? Always has been. Always will be.
It's incredibly concerning. Those programs are lifelines for millions of people. How can we justify cutting essential services when so many families are already struggling?
Oh, it's easy. Just say it's about fiscal responsibility and personal accountability. Then everyone nods along and forgets that people are, actually going hungry.
The article says it could leave 8 million Americans uninsured and potentially end food assistance for 11 million people. That's devastating.
And what's the justification? To fund more tax cuts for the wealthy, I bet. It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul, except Peter's already broke and Paul's swimming in gold coins.
It's just fundamentally wrong. A society should be judged by how it treats its most vulnerable members, not by how much wealth it accumulates at the top.
Exactly. It's like saying, hey, we're doing great. Just ignore the screaming from the basement. That's just the poors. They'll figure it out or not.
It also mentions Robert F. Kennedy Jr. removing the COVID vaccine from the list of recommended vaccines for pregnant women. What's up with that?
RFK Jr. Oh, he's off the deep end on vaccines. Never met a conspiracy theory he didn't like.
It's incredibly irresponsible. The science is clear. Vaccines are safe and effective, especially for pregnant women. Undermining public trust in vaccines puts lives at risk.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, pregnant ladies, just roll the dice. What's a little potentially life-threatening illness between friends?
And what about the impact on our global standing? Decisions like these undermine trust in American leadership and expertise.
Oh, our global standing took a nosedive a long time ago. We're basically the loud, obnoxious tourist who thinks everyone speaks English and waves a wad of cash around.
That's a grim picture, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can rebuild our alliances, prioritize diplomacy, and lead by example, but the administration needs to want to do that.
Lead by example? With what? A reality TV show? A Twitter rant? I'm starting to think the world is just one big, elaborate performance art piece, and we're all the unwilling audience.
Then there's this article about Britain doubling down on defense with new nuclear submarines.
Are we really going back to the Cold War era?
Well, Russia's acting like it's still the Cold War, so tit for tat, I guess. Show of force.
The irony is that they're also facing 90,000 cyber attacks. Building submarines seems like a rather antiquated response to modern threats.
Yeah, it's like trying to fight a computer virus with a battleship. Sure, it looks impressive, but it's not exactly effective, is it?
But the article does mention this is also a message to Trump that Europe is heeding his demand for NATO members to spend more on their own defense. So it's also posturing.
Posturing? Everything's posturing these days. It's all about looking tough, even if you're just flexing in front of a mirror.
I wish we could shift our focus from military spending to addressing climate change, poverty, and inequality. Those are the real threats to our long-term security.
Yeah, but those don't make for good photo ops, do they? Nobody wants to see politicians planting trees. They want explosions and aircraft carriers. It sells better.
And speaking of political shifts, check this out. Orban and Le Pen are cheering Karol Nawaki's election as Polish president.
Oh, great. More nationalist leaders cozying up to each other. That's exactly what the world needs right now.
It's definitely a setback for Tusk's pro-EU agenda. And with Nawaki having veto power, it's going to be even harder to pass progressive reforms.
Progressive reforms in Poland? That's like asking a vampire to go vegan. It's just not going to happen.
The article says this could fuel divisions within the EU at a time when it faces major challenges. That's not exactly comforting.
Divisions within the EU. That's practically the EU's official motto. They can't agree on anything, ever.
But the EU is still a vital force for stability and cooperation in Europe. We need to strengthen those alliances, not undermine them.
Strengthen alliances? Honey, the only thing stronger than a political alliance is my craving for chocolate after a bad news cycle. And that's saying something.
Okay, so Ukraine, budget cuts, nuclear submarines, nationalist victories. Is there any good news out there?
Well, I heard my neighbor's cat had kittens. Does that count?
Okay, that's actually kind of nice. New life, new hope, right? We need to hold on to those small moments of joy and connection in the face of all this chaos.
Kittens are cute, I'll give you that. But they also grow up to be cats who knock things off shelves. So even good news has a dark side.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for this week. Remember to stay informed, stay critical, and try to find some joy in the small things, even if those small things are just kittens.
And don't believe everything you read, especially on the internet, or on the news, or from politicians. Basically, trust nothing.
Let's all try and do something positive this week, even if it's just a small act of kindness. Every little bit helps.
And if all else fails, remember, the apocalypse is probably overrated. See you next week, folks.
Thanks for tuning in to World Gone Weird. Before we go, can we touch on the global food supply chains? All this political stuff inevitably trickles down to what's on our plates.
Oh, here we go. Is my kale going to be weaponized now, too?
It's not a joke, Jimmy. When you have political polarization, you get trade wars, sanctions, disruptions to agricultural production and distribution. It all adds up.
So, are you saying that my avocado toast is a casualty of global political unrest?
Potentially, yes. Think about it. If Ukraine, a major grain exporter, is at war, that affects global wheat prices. If countries impose sanctions on Russia, a major fertilizer producer, that impacts crop yields worldwide. Add in trade disputes fueled by political disagreements, and you have a recipe for food insecurity.
Okay, I get it. But isn't this just fear-mongering? Farmers will adapt, new trade routes will emerge. The market always finds a way, right?
The market can adapt, but that takes time. And in the meantime, it's the most vulnerable populations who suffer, people in developing countries, low-income communities. They're the ones who can't afford higher prices or alternative food sources.
So it's a food fight, but with real consequences. Great. Just when I thought I had enough to worry about.
And it's not just about availability, it's about trust. When food production becomes politicized, people start questioning the safety and quality of their food. Conspiracy theories spread, and trust in the food system erodes.
Conspiracy theories? You mean like the government is putting microchips in our potatoes?
Well, maybe not microchips, but think about the debates around GMOs, food labeling, and the influence of big corporations on food policy. These are all areas where political polarization can fuel distrust and misinformation.
So basically, we can't even trust our carrots anymore. Fantastic. I'm switching to a diet of pure cynicism. It's readily available and requires no supply chain.
This politicization can lead to localized crises too. Think about regions heavily reliant on specific imports that are suddenly cut off due to trade disputes or political instability. That can create real hunger and even conflict over resources.
So, are we talking about food riots in the streets? Is that where we're headed?
It's not inevitable, but it's a possibility. That's why it's crucial to promote sustainable agriculture, diversify our food sources, and build more resilient local food systems.
Sustainable agriculture? That sounds suspiciously like work. Can't we just invent a machine that makes all our food out of thin air? Problem solved.
But even then, who controls that technology? How is it distributed? The political issues don't just disappear. They just shift to a different domain.
Okay, I get it. So, what's the solution? World peace and everyone holding hands and singing Kumbaya. That's not exactly a realistic scenario, is it?
It starts with promoting dialogue and understanding across political divides. We need to find common ground on issues like food security and sustainable development. And we need to hold our leaders accountable for making decisions that prioritize human well-being over political gain.
Hold our leaders accountable? Good luck with that. They're about as accountable as a toddler with a box of crayons and a freshly painted wall.
It's about empowering local communities too, supporting farmers markets, community gardens, and local food initiatives. These create more resilient food systems and reduce reliance on global supply chains that are vulnerable to political disruptions.
So, you're saying I should start growing my own tomatoes in my tiny apartment? That's going to be a sight to see.
Even small steps can make a difference. Educate yourself about where your food comes from, support local farmers, and make conscious choices about what you eat.
Conscious choices? I'm barely conscious when I'm choosing what to eat. It's usually a race between me and the hunger monster, and the hunger monster always wins.
Ultimately, it's about recognizing the interconnectedness of everything. Political polarization, global supply chains, food security, it's all linked, and we can't solve these problems in isolation.
So, we're all doomed. Got it.
No, we're not doomed. We have the power to create a more just and sustainable world. But it requires us to be informed, engaged, and willing to work together, even when we disagree.
Okay, fine. I'll try to be less cynical. But if my avocado toast goes up to $20, all bets are off.
And that, folks, is the world gone weird and the world gone hungry. Until next time, stay aware, stay engaged, and maybe plant a tomato plant.